And actually, the shootings and the murders have gone down since a high point in 2016. They were lower in 2017 than 2016, lower in 2018 than 2017, and we're on a path to be lower in 2019 than we are in 2018. But that's never...
So Jeff, according to Tony Preckwinkle, who spoke at the City Club of Chicago earlier this week, things are getting better on the field of the violence that has racked Chicago, but she says the city maintains that it has a bad reputation nationwide, and that's just one of the things that we're going to be talking about this week as we kind of look collectively at both the problems that Chicago and Illinois is facing, as well as some people that will be proposing some solutions.
Well, look, it's a great city in many respects. You know, I'm here, you're in Springfield. We both enjoy Chicago a lot. I enjoy Springfield. But that having been said, a lot of that reputation is well deserved for crime. We'll be talking about that through the show. A lot of the reputation for being a city and state that doesn't work is fine, because we're losing population, as you know, continuously. People are voting with their feet. So I'm not sure she can say, yeah, the reputation hurts. But if she were here, I'd say, isn't it true, President Tony Preckwinkle, that a lot of that reputation that hurts is well deserved?
Well, let's think about what's going on. When I look at what's going on this weekend, one thing I'd point out, you know, you've got the end of the baseball season, and I'm not deflecting here. We got the Cardinals and the Cubs, and the point I would make that for all the national reputation of violence that Chicago gets, and as you say, well deserved, and you know what? Hundreds of people are being murdered every year. So how can you argue that it's not deserved? But by the same token, there is an understanding, or at least the presumption, that, you know, people are not staying away from the city. Chicago still gets something like 50 million visitors for conferences and for just tourism, and for baseball like this. This will be a big series this weekend in Chicago, with people from St. Louis coming up to see the Cardinals play the Cubs. And I suppose on one weird way, Jeff, maybe the fact that visitors are not afraid to come to Chicago is one of the things that's holding up the making this violence as much of a front burner issue and the solutions to it as perhaps it should be. Let's discuss more, but let's take a full view of what Tony Preckwinkle, the Cook County Board President, told the City Club of Chicago when we hear that full bite.
And actually, the shootings and the murders have gone down since a high point in 2016. They were lower in 2017 than 2016, lower in 2018 than 2017, and we're on a path to be lower in 2019 than we are in 2018. But that will never be the narrative nationally. The narrative nationally is all the murders and the shootings in Chicago. And you know, if you're a company, do you want to locate in a place that has that kind of reputation? If you're a talented person, do you want to come to the violence capital of the country if you listen to President Trump? I don't think so. So there are these perhaps unacknowledged consequences of our reputation for violence that we should all be aware of. So this is a tremendous challenge, and we need to address it collectively, but we've got to think about it in more holistic terms than it's usually cast.
Well, the President Preckwinkle, is right. Crime has gone down since 2016, year by year, almost down, or it's projected to be down in 2019 by the end of this year, almost to our 2015 levels. But there was a tremendous spike in 2016, which is somewhat unexplained. So it's going down, but it's only getting back to 2015. In 2015, 2016, before the big spike, Chicago had more homicides, had a total number of homicides that was equal to the total that occurred in both New York and Los Angeles. So it's too high. Even with it coming down, it's too high. That's my point. And I think what we'll be talking about is how are they addressing it. The other point is we're known for having the worst pension fiscal disaster in Chicago. Other cities have problems, but we're the far outlier. We're terrible. And Illinois, terrible. And population is leaving Illinois continuously. So Preckwinkle needs to say a few things like that and what her solution is, because she's been there for what now, 8 years? I mean, what has she done for Cook County to make it better? What's she going to do in the next 4 years to make it better? What is she doing to resolve this bail issue, which we'll get into, the bail dispute between the mayor and her? So, it's nice to make a city club speech like that. And, but I don't know that she really addressed the issues that we're going to address today. And it'd be swell to have her on the show sometime. And you and I would love to talk with her, right, Terry?
We would love to talk to her. I think everyone is open for both criticism and praise. Nobody is all right, nobody is all wrong, but they're in the position of power. They're in the position to make things happen or stop things from happening. And I think the fact of the matter is, look, we're going to spend a total of about 30 minutes here, Jeff, talking about some of these issues, going and listening to some of the people that we've interviewed and people like Tony Preckwinkle. But the fact of the matter is, these are monumental problems facing both the state of Illinois and the city. You and I have talked just recently, did a half-hour show on the pension problem, and obviously that's impacting everything. But there are problems beyond the pensions, and we're going to take a look more of some of the social issues. If you didn't have anything left to say, or if you do, go ahead. But otherwise, I want the people to hear something from an interview you recently did with conservative Charles Love, if you're ready for that.
Sure.
Because real simple, Lori's right, Evans is wrong. But here's the thing.
Explain that.
I didn't go to
Explain
law
that to
school. Let me
people.
tell you. So I'm going to give you an
What is
example.
Lori right about? Just explain it.
You said Lori said we need to look at how many times they've done this. Look at the circumstances and don't just assume
So
you're not convicted, so you can't hold them in jail. And you
So
said Judge
Love would
Evans
say no bond for this guy.
Right. And you
And
say
Chief
Evans
Judge
says-
Evans and Tony Preckwinkle, Cook County Board
No,
President, what would they say?
100% wrong. But here's the more
No,
important
what would
thing.
they say?
They would say that he hasn't been convicted of a crime, so you need to let him out until he has his day in
Let him
court.
out.
But here's my answer to that. So Evans, this is the bigger problem. So we look up to people like Evans because he has a law degree, and a layman like me didn't go to law school.
Yeah.
But I got common sense, right? So I will say this to that judge. I would say, okay, because he hasn't been convicted, we should not hold him until he's gone to court, you want to say,
Okay.
in this case. And my response to that, well, when people get arrested for rape, embezzlement crimes, any other crime, murder, serial killer. So when we hold a serial killer, unless we caught him in the act, we should let him back out on the street.
Yeah.
And nobody would say that. So if you waited until someone was convicted, then nobody would be in the jail.
So, Mr. Charles Love, who's a co-host every Saturday, 1 to 3 p.m. on WINDs, that's 560, excuse me, 560 AM radio. Black and Right is the name of the show. And, the issue that Love is talking about there has been going back and forth now for several months between the mayor, Lori Lightfoot, and the police chief, Superintendent Eddie Johnson, who are totally together on this issue. And they're opposed to Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle and Chief Judge Tim Evans, Chief of the Circuit Court of Cook County. And the issue is this. The police chief and the mayor say they really focus on violence on the weekends because that's when it's worse on the west and south side of Chicago. Starts in the early evening and goes through Monday morning. And people really try to, get a handle on it and make that better. And the thing of it is, what the mayor says, we're arresting people. We're arresting them on a gun possession thing. It's illegal possession of a gun when you have a gun and you don't have a FOID card. And maybe they have an AK-47, which may be illegal to begin with, but certainly is illegal if you don't have a FOID card. And these people are being arrested with major weaponry. And, the chief judge and Cook and Preckwinkle, who've been on this bail reform kick, say, look, we've been trying to say, people, we don't want to have any cash bond because, that's racist. And we don't want to have even light bond for people who are charged because they're not convicted yet. They're just simply being arrested and charged. So let them out. And the mayor says, no, look at the whole evidence. If they have priors, prior arrests, maybe they got a string of them. Forget for the moment whether they've been convicted, which they may have, but say they have 1 or 2 convictions. You don't let these folks out. So I'm summarizing, I'm paraphrasing, but I think that's the issue. And fourth, with each Preckwinkle and the mayor taking shots at each other, the Chicago Tribune editorialized on this and said, for people who don't know, who live out of town, The city hall, mayor's office on the 5th floor is in the same building as in the same floor as Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle. So they say, gee, why doesn't the mayor just walk down the hall and talk to Cook County Board President and try to resolve this? I didn't say that. The Tribune editorial board.
And what's the
And
answer?
I don't know the answer.
Why doesn't she? Or why
She
don't
says
either of them
something,
get together?
Preckwinkle says, oh, I tried to call and she wasn't in. It's just silly. And
And the reality is
not
what,
silly
Jeff,
is-
that because they ran against each other for mayor, that they still have such hard feelings and they don't get along, they can't bridge those
it's more
personal
than that.
differences.
It's more than that. Preckwinkle has very strong feelings about the benefits of reforming the bail laws. And she thinks too many people have been held too long and they simply just didn't have the money, like you and I might have if we were charged for something and we didn't think we were guilty. We'd post bond and we'd be out.
Let me
And
bring
she says
something up.
they should. So there's more. All I'm saying, there's more to it than they ran against each other and one lost to the other.
One thing that
And
strikes,
the mayor has very strong convictions on it.
all right,
So that's
one thing that
that's the
strikes
hard.
me is that there could be a weird coming together, weird in a sense, is that you have some people that are going to be accused of being soft on crime, but they're arguing these people who are committing crimes have mental illnesses. Now, at the same time, people like, well, let's say the leaders in Chicago are very much always arguing about having more gun regulations and taking guns away from people. And the gun advocates often say those people who go out and do these shootings are not responsible gun owners. In fact, they're almost always, if you look at it, people who have had mental illnesses and there's a record there. So maybe there is something that in this debate where people could come together. I know Tom Dart, the sheriff of Cook County, spoke at the Union League Club several years ago that I was in attendance, and he was saying that he doesn't run a prison, he runs the biggest mental health facility in the nation.
But Jerry, excuse me, before we go on about that, let me raise a big picture point.
All right.
Okay. I understand that's important, but let's slot it in the right place. Because Speaker Madigan, we're taping this on September 19th, 2019. Just about a week ago, Speaker Mike Madigan appointed a the Illinois House of Representatives, Firearm Public Awareness Task Force. And he designated 10 Democrats, state House reps, to be on that. And he told or suggested or asked House Republican leader Jim Durkin to designate 10 Republicans. And the goal of that task force, according to the speaker, is to review the gun violence issue, which we're talking about here, and to make recommendations to reduce violence. And perhaps, and LaShawn Ford, who's chairing that committee, has been quoted as saying, we should maybe look at the concealed carry law. Perhaps it should be revised, concealed carry law in Illinois. We should look at this bail bond issue that we've just been talking about, this dispute between Mayor Lightfoot, Police Chief Johnson on the one hand, and Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle, Circuit Court Chief Judge Tim Evans on the other hand. So that started, well, it wasn't set out as to when that task force will meet. It was just said that I could list, maybe I'll come back.
Are you suggesting this task force is nothing more than a paper answer just to make it look like people are doing something, or what?
I'm saying it's a reasonable notion to have a task force, and LaShawn Ford has said, well, you should have me a conversation. This conversation includes those people who have strong views about gun owner rights and those people who have strong views on gun control. Everybody will be included in this discussion, is what he's saying, and we're going to address issues, and I'll come back to that shortly. But my problem with that is you have an immediate problem now. People are dying every weekend. Shooters with AK-47s are being arrested, and then sometimes, and just military-style weapons, if you don't want to call them assault weapons.
Let me ask something.
They're being arrested, and they're back on the street, and the point is, people are getting killed, so can we really afford the luxury of having a task force that might report back to us 6 months later and a year later? I mean, Preckwinkle and the mayor still need to have their little meeting They should
Well,
both
I think
maybe
they would argue
meet
that,
in the hall.
as Tony Preckwinkle pointed out, the crime is coming down. They're doing certain things right. Now, I would also say, and you can tell me, because this is why we do a Chicago and Springfield, so we can get both the Chicago view and downstate. But you got Kim Foxx, who has been widely criticized by people in Chicago for not prosecuting certain crimes, and she used to be the chief of staff to Tony Preckwinkle, and I don't know the answer to this, but do you have an analysis to what extent, if anything, does that factor in here, that relationship between Tony Preckwinkle and Kim Foxx? And what some say is an approach where the prosecuting attorney for the city is going soft on crime.
Well, yeah, she's up for re-election. Ms. Fox is running. She'll have a primary challenge in the Democratic primary, and possibly be a strong challenge. And if she succeeds there and gets past that, she might actually have a strong Republican challenge, even though the Republican Party is pretty weak in Cook County. But, there are no coincidences here. Politics is always prevalent in everything that happens. Of course, the politicians will deny it and say they're above it. Don't you believe it for a second, okay? The point you just made is extremely important. Some would say Cook County Board President Preckwinkle essentially put Kim Foxx there. Her critics, the Fox critics, would say she's never really tried a case. She says, some say she led people to believe she tried hundreds. We have the smaller thing, which became a national issue. Some would say the laughingstock of America as we drop charges. She dropped charges against Smollett. I won't go into that. So all that's there. The mayor's coming in.
Go ahead.
But there's one point, Terry. People are dying every Friday night. Needless. We've talked before about mask. Okay, mothers against senseless killings. Okay,
I would
we haven't
say to
talked
Tony
about.
Preckwinkle.
Excuse me. We haven't talked about the witness who testified and then was killed in the last week or two.
Right.
And we haven't talked about whether there should be a witness protection program. We haven't talked about any of this, okay?
You asked that, did you not? Didn't you ask Mayor Lightfoot about that?
I did, and Mayor said, she laughed, she said, Paul Vallis, who I mentioned, that suggests that, she starts saying we can't disrupt their lives. And I said, you misunderstood me. And I thought she was going to start saying out of the city, take people and send them to another state. And she says, no, I know. She says, trust me, I heard Paul Vallis. But I was going to explain to her, you could do a
and
protection
what is Paul
program
Vallis saying?
without
You're
even
referencing Paul Vallis.
Well, he just said there should be a witness protection program. I think Paul would say you could do this without even taking them out of their neighborhood. You could just put a few cops around their house from time to time. Maybe you could catch some of these people who killed that witness before they do so, and maybe that will cause them to be a little less intimidating. My point is, nobody elected Mayor Lori Lightfoot to accept the status quo. And when somebody gets killed who is a witness, we need more than the mayor to talk about how sorry she is. Really. I'd like to hear the 4 or 5 steps that she's taking so that's less likely to happen in the future. That's my point. And the other point, sorry for getting a little emotional about this, I don't mean to shout. But my other point, Terry, is that this thing about the bail issue, you should have a discussion and it should be made public, the resolution. And if Preckwinkle wants to stick with her view, let her stick with it. But let's not have this stuff behind closed doors and nothing. And it should be done. We're doing this on September 19th.
Right.
There's no reason why that meeting shouldn't occur in the next week. And we should hear some resolution of it. And if it doesn't, I would say, the black mothers who are subject, and fathers and kids on the south and west side who are subject to this violence. I'm just saying they should, here's the point. They should be over there at City Hall at Cook County Board President Preckwinkle's office next week, and they want to protest something, protest that, okay?
Well, I would also add that Tony
they're
Preckwinkle,
entitled to get a resolution.
in the longer version of that bite, the Mayor Preckwinkle said she blamed Donald Trump for painting Chicago as the violence capital of America and how that might keep businesses here. You know what? Number one, as we already pointed out, there are every year hundreds of people being killed there. You might say on a per capita basis it's not the worst, but it's pretty bad. And secondly,
It's pretty bad, yeah, on per capita
you know,
as well.
secondly, when you get this Jussie Smollett case, which is a farce, and hey, you think that doesn't hurt your reputation? And I know the city of Chicago, the police feel muzzled. They feel like they're wasting their time. They feel they got a prosecutor is not doing her job, so why should they do theirs? All of this adds up and should be addressed. And so if you're going to solve these problems, you got to start solving them and not just kind of, as George Wallace used to say, pussyfooting around. The other thing we should...
Let me just add,
Well, the
I'm
other...
going to just interrupt to add to that. I'm not sure where you're going
Well,
next.
go
but
ahead
just
and add to it.
While we're
And then
still, on this task force issue,
Right.
Representative Ford, LaShawn Ford, who's the chairman, said he's concerned that schools and hospitals and other public areas have been the targets of gun violence. I don't know what he means to do about that, but he's concerned. He also said the Illinois concealed
Carrie?
some people think that gun violence has gone up since Illinois' concealed carry law was enacted in 2013. Let me remind the representative that was enacted because the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals said essentially the law in Chicago was unconstitutional, so they had to have a concealed carry program. So I don't know where he's going, can't pick and choose which constitution he's going to follow. And he said we should examine the guns in the marketplace, especially assault rifles or military style weapons. So, and he says nationally.
I doubt those are the ones that
What?
are being necessarily used on this.
Let me just put this out there.
Well, we got to
Nationally,
move or we're
LaShawn
going to
Ford-
run out of time.
Is it? But LaShawn Ford said nationally, even the Republicans say we may have to address assault weapons or military style weapons,
All right, one of
assault
the,
rifles.
I'm going to move along
So
here,
he
Jeff.
says all of this should be seriously considered.
Okay.
And people should know
One
that's
of the other
going
things
on.
we need to consider is that we have a new administration in Springfield, the Pritzker administration. They're taking over government. They're going over the different departments. Governor Pritzker obviously was sworn in January, but other members of his cabinet have joined later. And one of those is Grace Howe, who is now the Secretary of the Department of Human Services. She spoke also this week at the City Club of Chicago. We want to play a little bite, or actually a longer bite, of what she spoke about and how she said, while we have to give better services to these troubled neighborhoods and people with issues and their families, but that this department that she walked into she found it to be pretty miserable and in a lot of need of repair.
As I said earlier, one of the things that is really hard for the state to do is to deal with individuals and families who have a variety of complex needs. So if you don't cleanly fit only in one box, it's very challenging for us to kind of wrap around services. And so I think the work is yet to come and the solutions are yet to be solved. And I think it's like a very complicated patchwork of things that we're going to have to put in place in order for families with children with disabilities to thrive. I believe that we have a very strong early intervention system for 0 to 5. I think we need to continue to strengthen special education programs for children in the school district, but then also we need to really figure out as a state what kind of residential options we want for children when they're not able to thrive in any of those settings.
So Jeff, obviously a department that needs repair, but they're going to try to improve some of these services for those people that need them. And I just try to remind people that Chicago can't be doing things without all the other departments of state. They can do certain things, but they're also going to be looking at Governor Pritzker and some of his team.
Sounds like she's very thoughtful. Sounds like she has a lot of experience and training in this area and expertise. And all I'm saying is we've had new people come in and she sounds pretty good to me relative to the prior new people, but she needs to be on a short leash, okay? Because the governor has been there for 8 months, the new administration. And I'm not sure how long she's been there, but I would say after another 3 months, we ought to be on 3 months quarterly reports to somebody overseeing DCFS, which has been a mess for the last 2 decades. And some people have said, well, we didn't raise spending enough. Well, we've had Democrats and Republicans there for 2 decades, so you can't blame one party. And so the answer is not always we didn't raise spending enough. All I'm saying is short leash. Grace, come on back in 3 months. Put you on the program here. Tell us how kids in Illinois who are wards of the state are a lot safer now than they were when you came in.
What we
Just tell
hear
us that.
from both the Pritzker and Pritzker administration, Lori Lightfoot and Tony Preckwinkle, is how we need to control guns. We need to have this government program. We need to have this thing. And maybe that's fine. But the Republicans, on the other hand, are saying they have an entirely different agenda. And I recently caught up with Jeannie Ives, former state representative, who's now running for Congress in the 6th District. She said what she's hearing is not what these people are selling. When she talks to the voters, she's hearing that they want more freedom and less government action.
But I've also met quite a few people that I had never met before that are interested in taking on this fight. They see this as a fight against the entire left's agenda at the federal level, from, open borders, and by the way, we're going to give every illegal immigrant some, taxpayer-funded health care. It's all nonsense. They are tired of this. So we're going to call the question in 2020. Do you believe in freedom and the free enterprise system, backed up by the rule of law, as the best path forward for all of America? Or do you believe, as Sean Casten does and his party, that more government, in fact, massively more government and higher taxes, are going to be the solution to what ails America?
And Jeff, your reaction?
Well, look, Jeannie is purportedly running in the Republican primary for the right to run against Sean Casten. So she's purportedly running against Evelyn Sanguinetti in the Republican primary. But if people go to youtube.com/Illinois Channel TV and see your excellent, short but excellent interview, Terry, that you did with Jeannie Ives, they'll get a sense of how Jeannie Ives is running. She's running in the general. She's running against Sean, and what she's telling people essentially, because it's Republicans who vote in the Republican primary, I think she's telling the Republicans, look at how I'm going to do it. Do you like it? I'm going to take it to Sean. I'll do big. She doesn't even have to say it. The implicit statement is she's saying she'll do way better than Evelyn Sanguinetti. Why? Because she knows how to couch the issue. She knows how to speak succinctly. She says, look, it's a matter of freedom, as you said, okay? And the 6th Congressional District does not want to be giving up their freedom. They don't want the Democratic Party to tell them whether they can eat red meat or not. They don't want the Democratic Party to say whether they can,
wear red hats,
support somebody with a red hat. And she says, nobody's really talking about gun control. She asked her about that, and she says, they are talking about health care, and they're talking about the cost and patient choice, freedom, okay? She said the 6th Congressional District, those residents solve problems every day. They get up, they go to work, they solve problems, okay? They know how to do it. They don't really, there are some areas, obviously, where you need government, and I'm sure Jeannie would agree, but you don't need to have the government intruding into every decision of your life. I think that's what she's running on, and she says, and she'll also tie if she gets to the general, she'll tie the National Democratic Party and some of the statements we're hearing by those presidential primary candidates around the neck of Sean Casten, like open borders. She said,
We got 1 minute, so I want to just say,
okay.
Look, first of all, folks, feel free to, thank you for watching. If you're watching online, you can also see other things online. If you're watching on cable, I should say, you can see things online. If you're seeing this and you want to see the full interviews, they're on our website. I'll bring that up, and join the conversation. Leave us your comments, and in the future here, Jeff and I were talking about reading some of these comments as well as bringing it up on full screen. So we do want to hear from you. Jeff,
can I say one thing?
Sure, go ahead.
Just tell people it's a great city. The Shedd Aquarium, the Art Institute, all the cultural aspects of downtown Chicago, all the companies that are in downtown Chicago, all the employment, and that goes around the state of Illinois. So it's a great state. It's a great city, and many great cities in Illinois. We're not saying that's not true, but a great deal of work has to be done by government entities charged with dealing with things that they're not.
And we're going to end. Thanks so much.